Hi everyone, Floyd Meyer here. I am a physician assistant. I have a master's in public health, a degree in molecular biology, and I'm currently working in physical medicine and rehabilitation. Today we are going to be continuing our series on resilience, which is the ability to remain well, recover, or even thrive in the face of adversity. This week we are going to be discussing psychological resilience and some specific practices that you can engage in order to improve the resilience of your mind. The idea of resilience as it applies to humans actually started with the research of psychological resilience. According to Liu et al., quote, "The idea of resilience as a resistance to stress originated in the 1970s when researchers began to study children that were capable of normal development despite having difficult upbringing. And an interesting finding from the continuation of this research was that, quote, there is a significant variation in the way that individuals react and respond to extreme stress and adversity. While some individuals will develop psychiatric conditions, things like post-traumatic stress disorder and major depressive disorder, others recover from these stressful situations and experiences without displaying any significant symptoms of psychological ill health." Now, as we have discussed previously, resilience is the ability to remain well, recover, and thrive in the face of adversity. And this adversity can take many different forms, especially when we're talking about different types of psychological resilience. So this adversity can come from things like social rejection. It can be some type of a failure in some type of like school examinations. It can come from early life stress and from other chronic, enduring, stressful experiences. Improvements in resilience in humans have been reported as a result of psychological and cognitive therapies, such as life skills, education-based programs, such as mindfulness, meditation training, and stress inoculation training. Now, I would encourage you all to check out my previous videos. I've made a lot of videos in the past on different types of life skills that can help to improve your overall resilience. But today we're going to be focusing specifically on mindfulness training and stress inoculation training. So mindfulness is described as a process of bringing attention to what is occurring in one's present moment. And mindfulness and meditation have been shown to have remarkably effective results in things like reducing stress, in decreasing chronic pain, and improving symptoms of anxiety and depression. Now, there are numerous ways to start a mindfulness practice. The simplest for most people is to use an app that will guide you through your practice. And there are a lot of apps out there. My favorite of them is Headspace. I have been using Headspace for the entirety of 2020 and into 2021. And I have noticed some significant improvements in my awareness of how my mind can get into these loops that will increase my stress and my anxiety. And now I have learned some tools that I can help to break these different types of cycles. Mindfulness practices can be extremely helpful because they can help you to understand how you feel about how you feel. Now, say for instance, we have someone who is very stressed at work, which is extremely common around these times. And they are having a difficult time with all of these changes that we've been experiencing this past year. Now, this person really has two main options on what to do with these feelings. The first is to normalize their experience. They can think that stress is a normal feeling that many people around the world are experiencing, and this is not something that is wrong with them. This will allow them to look at themselves and look at their environment and their behaviors and to determine what needs to be done in order for them to get back to some type of a normal equilibrium. And this would be an example of a healthy way of looking at a feeling of stress. The second option is to think of this feeling of stress as a sign that something is actually wrong with them. And they can think that they are weak, that they are inadequate, and that others around them, their coworkers and their friends, are doing way better than they are at coping with the changes that will have been happening all around them. And this way of being is going to just increase your stress levels, and it's going to be an overall unhealthy way of relating to increased stress. Now, when you start a mindfulness practice, you might be very surprised by how many of your thoughts are actually just ways for you, your ego, to continue to experience these feelings of anxiety, sadness, of anger. And you may find yourself just ruminating in these thoughts, keeping that painful feeling, the feeling that you don't necessarily enjoy, at the forefront of your mind. And by engaging in a regular mindfulness practice, you can learn to notice these thoughts and to just let them pass. And this will give you some inner peace that will improve your overall resilience to stress. Speaking of stress, our next strategy is called stress inoculation training. And this is a resilience building intervention that is designed to enhance skills to minimize the negative effects of a stressful event. Now, the first step in this stress inoculation training is education. First, you need to be educated on the potential stressors. You need to understand the signs and symptoms of stress. You need to know different types of self-help behaviors, things like mindfulness, like breathing practices, things like that. And you need to have some resources available so that you can get professional help when you need it. And the second step of this stress inoculation training is where you improve those skills, and you are doing something called rehearsal, where the individual is going to develop and practice the coping skills and the self-help behaviors that they will need. Finally, you will continue your training in increasingly stressful environments. And this will most closely, you want it to mirror some type of a real world situation that you are going to be doing. So, and there's many different forms of this therapy, but usually it's best done by a trained professional, and this can be either in some type of an individual setting or some type of a group setting. Now, that being said, there are some things that you can do today to improve your stress resilience. Some of the best self-help behaviors include breathing practices. My favorite type is something called box breathing, and it's an extremely simple exercise where basically all you're going to do is you're going to breathe in for a count of 4, you're going to hold for a count of 4, you breathe out for a count of 4, and then you hold for a count of 4. And this cycle is repeated anywhere from 1 minute to 10 minutes, and it's a great way to calm the nervous system. It's something that you can have your mind, you can focus on that one task, that one thing of just counting to 4 and then holding for 4, breathing out for 4, and then holding for 4. And I used to do this a bunch when I was in grad school, especially when I was taking exams. I would do this to try and calm myself down right before the exam. And this can be a very effective and a very easy thing for people to start with. And generally, I would recommend starting this practice in a relatively stress-free environment. It can be hard to hold your breath, especially when you are in a kind of fight or flight mode, when you're already really ramped up. So that's why it's best to start in a very relatively stress-free environment. Learn the skills, and then over time you can slowly implement them in more and more stressful situations, which again will improve your overall resilience to stress. For years, the body and the mind were thought to be separate, and this was the standard teaching in medical schools throughout the United States. But now it has become increasingly obvious that they are one in the same. When someone is compromised physically, they will be more likely to develop psychological disorders, and vice versa. Training the mind is extremely important if you want to improve your overall resilience, making you better able to remain well, recover, and thrive in the face of adversity, which is something we could all use a little more of in these trying times. I hope that this has been helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please share it with your friends, share it with your family. Make sure that you are subscribing and following for more of this content. The time for action is now. Again, this is Floyd Meyer. Have a great day.